You're listening to Biz-Souls, the business podcast with an edge, hosted by me, Rona Lewis, and Jeffrey Hansler. Tune in for perspectives and discoveries about the changing world of business. It's time to connect to the heart, soul, and humor of how business gets done. Hello, all, and welcome to Biz-Souls. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler, and we get to the heart and soul of business and the people that make it happen.
There's a little hesitation there. Did you have to think about that?
No, I was fooling with the dials on the sound system. Sorry.
Who am I? What are we doing? We are playing, and it's a good thing because today's guest is Jessica Shaw, one of my play buddies from across the pond. You're in London, right?
I am, yes.
Yeah. So welcome to the show. I am going to read a little bit about you for our listeners and watchers. Jessica Shaw specializes in bespoke team building and staff well-being using creativity and play. She's a trainer and workshop designer / facilitator with 20 years experience creating and delivering creative, playful workshops for companies, school staff, and children and young people. She supports companies and individuals with presentation skills, staff development, and workplace dynamics and culture. She is passionate about using playful means, getting to the heart of the matter, using creativity and fun to promote well-being in the workplace and beyond. Hiya, Jess.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're glad to have you. Rona's coming your way in March, isn't she? Aren't you going there in March?
Yes, I'll be in London to do a speaking gig. But Jess and I originally met online, I think, right? Not on a dating site. We have a lot of.
It would have been okay if it was
if
it was a dating site. No worries.
Like the play date has a new meaning now.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, we have a bunch of play friends in common, and we just said, we really have to talk. So we set up a Zoom and had a ball not that long ago. And I was like, you got to come on the podcast. And here she is.
Yay.
So Jeffrey, you want to start with your question?
Yes, I always get to ask. So what did you want to be when you grew up?
At what age? Well, okay, I'm being pedantic. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an actress.
There you go.
Stage, movie. Didn't matter?
I think I just was an unbelievable daydreamer and was just constantly imagining myself sort of, I don't know, performing in things. And then, as we talk, I'm sure you'll have to sort of show yawning faces to shut me up a bit because I'll just go on and on. But yes, I wanted to be an actress. And then I kind of changed my mind after I did a drama degree and realized that I wanted to use theatre and playfulness, I suppose, in a different way. It kind of suited me more.
So was there anything negative that took you away from the acting side, or was it just a positive you thought you could, this is really what you want to do, this fit your passion better?
That's an excellent question. I suppose it was a bit of both. I was an angry young woman and I was kind of disillusioned with something. I mean, I don't even remember. I was talking to a good friend of mine. I was like, why were we so angry about that degree? And neither of us could quite remember, but at the time it felt like really righteous. But I think I was still quite idealistic, but I thought that kind of we were going to be lifted up and challenged in a way where people said, you believe that? Well, have you thought about it this way? And it kind of wasn't that way. And I had a few experiences where I saw how theatre and improv specifically could be used and how theatre could be used in the community for good. And suddenly something clicked in me and I was like, I think that's what I want to do. I want to use theatre, drama, all those skills. At the time, I didn't call them transferable skills, but that's what I would say now.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, I had a few little light bulb moments where I was like, that's what I want to do. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. If you want the questions that elevate you and ask you, what's your perspective on it? You got to go down 2 doors to the philosophy department. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think you're probably right. And I think it's part of growing up, right? That, I kind of had this feeling that I wanted all those people, even your doctor is a human being who's had a bad day, and I wanted them all to be kind of more rounded than that and somehow not mark me down because I didn't have the same opinion on them. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why I was an angry young woman. But anyway, yay, because it kind of got
Everything
me
happens
to,
for a reason. Yeah.
well, absolutely.
Yeah. I think you and I talked about this, Jessica. I have a similar background also. I was in acting for a while and I got judged on, I work out a lot and then it was like, this is not fun.
Mm.
And I wanted it to be fun. And like you, I use improv and, art and all kinds of stuff for like you say, for good instead of evil. So
Indeed.
yeah, it makes it so much fun.
For sure. And I think for me, maybe there was a realization about that part of the theatre world, which is ultimately putting yourself forward and wanting to be picked or not picked, which is, I think you've got to be super robust in a particular way for that. And I think, I'm a sensitive soul. So maybe I just kind of thought, and I'm not very competitive either. So I kind of think maybe that whole side of it just stopped appealing. People getting really kind of unpleasant about who was going to get the main part, and I was really like, you have it. Which is not how to get ahead in drama.
Indeed, that's true. That's true. So, how did this lead you to PACT Creative, and what does that stand for?
Okay, so PACT Creative stands for play. PACT stands for play, act, create, transform. And how I got there was that I spent, so after the degree, I had spent some time during that time a placement in West Africa where I saw theatre and education and the community really kind of as a transformational tool. And then I kind of came back and I kind of decided I wanted to use theatre in a different way. And I trained with people who worked and did drama and education programs in prisons. And through that, same organization, I went to some of their education programs in schools, which are called pupil referral units here, which is for kids that have many, many problems and challenges in life and therefore that impacts their behavior. And they often can't go to mainstream school. And PRUs, they're called pupil referral units, are often where some of these kids end up. And I went there to do a project with this organization and something about it clicked and the kids took to me and I took to the kids and it was another this is what I'm going to do, and through that I kind of didn't have formal training, but I then started just getting more and more experience and I went from charities and offsite education programs and ended up managing therapeutic teams in schools for kids that were at risk of getting excluded, and then I was training their people that wanted to do that work. And I spent many years in those charities. The last charity I worked for, I spent about 10 years working for children and vulnerable families. And we learned about neuroscience of what happens when kids experience too much trauma. And it was just, I loved it. It was something quite brilliant. And I was able to use that playful theatre, kind of playful design in my work, as well as talking and managing and training and all the rest of it. And then very sadly, that charity folded and I was just pushing 40 and I was like, and my daughter was about to start kind of full-time school and people kept sending me these, oh, what about this youth work position? I was like, God, I don't think I can go out there again. And for my sins, I kind of joked that I did it all backwards. Like I had quite a good career. And in the last place, everybody knew me. I'd been there a long time. I was like the go-to for certain things. And I was like, I know, for my sins, I'm going to branch out on my own and start a business, which I really don't have a head for business. And I wasn't on social media. I'm just a really good facilitator and I like people, So I was like, right, I'll branch out on my own. And some friends kind of made me a website and I did pay them for it. And I was like, okay, what do I know? What do I do? Let's put it out there and let's give it a go. So I kind of backwards started working for myself, probably when I should have, upside down. But there we are. And that's how PACT was formed.
Nice.
And Jessica, what year was that about?
I think 2016.
2016. Okay.
Was born.
Were you going pretty good before the pandemic? Sorry, Rona.
That's okay.
Were you going pretty good before the pandemic, and the pandemic put a real crimp on things?
It's a great question.
That's a really good question, and kind of an annoying answer is kind of yes and no. because I was kind of finding my feet and I was doing my comfort zone really is schools and education. And when I started, I kind of had quite a lot of contacts and lots of work in schools with staff, training staff, and then some corporate works. And I love the variety of that, that I could be one day in a sort of in a kind of outskirts area of London working with teaching staff, and the next week, in the center of London in a fancy office. And there's something wonderful about that. So it was sporadic at first, definitely. And I tried my hand at doing sort of stuff for the public, but I found that was really challenging because it's how to fill them. How do you put in lots of work promoting those things, and it's not always easy to fill once you pay the venue. So I decided, okay, I'm going to be the one that goes to the company or the group, and that's another USP. I don't have any props, and I come to you wherever you are. So yes, I was kind of plodding, and then the pandemic hit, and one of my bookings was like, "Can you switch online?" I was like, "Of course!"
Right?
I'm like the least techie person. I was dragged kicking and screaming onto social media when I started PACT with friends going, "Jess, get with the program." I was like, "I want to be word of mouth." They were like, "This is word of mouth, lady." So you're gay. I'm like an old hippie at heart, basically. And that's that's the measure of me, really. Like, let's just all get along and be nice to each other. And then we have a kind of I had a press opportunity here. There's a kind of Facebook press group. Rona, I don't know if I told you about, there's an American equivalent. If I didn't, I will send you the link.
Yeah, I think you did. I'm not sure, but we'll worry about it later. Right now, it's all about you. Got it.
Yay! Me. That's the actor sort of coming through still. And but the pandemic part answer is that I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And so somebody asked me to switch online. I kind of taught myself loosely how to use Zoom. It was okay. I asked some friends to practice with me, some practitioner friends, and it was good. And once one said, look, I felt really connected over Zoom for the first time, and I was like, okay, we can do something with this. And then, but I felt sad, for all the reasons. And I was like, but I like people and I can't read the room. And then this press group, it's an online group for a small fee. It's kind of puts journalists and entrepreneurs together. And so either you can pitch sort of linked to news stories. So it works totally with the current news. And sometimes news journalists pitch. And some of it's, funny. Well, to me, maybe, like, did you have, hair transplants that went wrong? And people say, this is me.
Is
And hope
is
for a
that Peter
business mission.
Shankman's thing?
No.
No? Okay, because he has one here it's called Help a Reporter Out.
Okay. It's quite similar. So this is an English woman who was a journalist and an entrepreneur, and she had what she calls a light bulb moment, and that's why the group's called Light Bulb. It's quite brilliant.
Send me that anyway. So you never know.
Yay! Exactly. So I replied to something, a call out for a journal about what can people do while they're stuck at home. And I kind of last minute saw it and thought, oh, I could do this. And I was like number 25 on a list of 25 things you could do. And my website hits went up, I think my SEO woman told me, by about 400%.
Wow.
And suddenly I got loads of inquiries. And so actually it kind of saw me through. And what happened was I was a bit ambivalent about being online until I saw how impactful it was, and that people were they felt really connected, and all that stuff, Rona, that about what play can do. And I learned, okay, I can replicate, because I work in a circle and we sit around usually. And I was like, people feel like they're in a circle taking turns, and they're laughing and they're feeling. And so I got really into it because I could see how it was really supporting people. And because of my background, and I'm not scared to hold challenging emotions. So I always check in with people, and sometimes people would get kind of upset. They were like, I miss those moments, by the water cooler, those things that are the spice of life. How are you? How's the kids? All of that kind of stuff. And I realized that this could actually really help people. And then I kind of and it's funny because I've got some videos and little screenshots from those sessions, and it does often seem like I'm the one laughing the most.
Well, that's
I'm
good.
having so much fun here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was challenging, but I got through by kind of a stroke of luck in a way that people switched online. They had more time. They saw something in a decent newspaper, and it helped them and me.
Jessica,
Awesome.
was there a specific business topic or a trend for business topics during that time? Or were they just
Mm.
coming for general well-being? They just needed to connect.
I think connection was major, but I did also get once when we were back in, so we kind of when we came out of the first lockdown and then went back in, there was more of this. So yes, initially it was about connection. It was about how can we keep ourselves going and looking after our staff and really sort of supporting them. And then afterwards it became, there were conferences that were organized and they still needed breakout sessions. I got contacted by, excuse me, communications teams that were kind of feeling stuck for ideas and people that were employed having never met in person. And so it was about integrating staff, getting that sense of team when they were separated. So predominantly, I'd say yes, team and connection and well-being. But then we did also get more. We're working on a theme. How can we do it? And needing something to keep the energy flowing because screen fatigue is real, right?
Oh, yeah.
People that were just in meeting after meeting after meeting, and I suppose or PACT was something energizing and different, albeit still on a screen.
Yeah. And Jeffrey, I mean, you teach online, sometimes 5 days a week. So how do and don't you get them excited and break things up?
No, I make them miserable. I work them to death. I
I know he makes
absolutely,
me miserable.
you
I
know.
don't know about everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you can do a lot online. You can, yeah. So,
Surprisingly enough, that's why it's I always say purposeful and attune play because you need to attune to the people you're working with. And yes, it's virtually impossible to attune, as you know, Jessica, to an entire room because everybody's
Sure.
different. And it's actually, I think, easier a lot online. You can,
Mm.
you learn to read from here to here.
right. And my question for Jessica was because she had that kind of that press connection run. And so then people were seeking you out. So if you started in 2016, that puts you that's 4 years of you're doing something. And then when the pandemic hit, getting on and not being on social media and those things, getting connected. I just didn't know if there was a pattern that they were looking for something. So
Yes, and then it was like a kind of theme of things were challenging, but then we had the kind of reintegration. So how do we get back together? Or we've never met in
right,
person. It's super interesting. Yeah, and then it's like you're riding the recession as
right,
well, or,
right.
challenging times. And at the same time, I don't know if you find this, Rona, but for me, and I'm very open to improving via feedback, hence the kind of the growth with the online stuff that I could see. And as you say, Jeffrey, there's loads that you can do. And I learned in a big group, you can play more visually. So you get one person can lead and lots can follow, and then they get the visual feedback of it. So there's lots of things that I learned to adapt and play depending. And then the smaller group, you can turn take and all the rest of it. So it's kind of, yeah, following trends. And then also, yeah, for me, that's what I was going to say. It's about how people find you. Because I think overall, when people do find us, they get a huge amount from it and we get
Yeah.
repeat customers. But it's that thing of the people that probably need it most feel like they're too busy and too stressed to do something so frivolous as, messing around,
Well,
and
yes.
it's kind of getting over. And that hasn't changed. People either really get it and love the idea and seek you out, or they need some convincing.
That's actually a silky segue to my next question. What do you do? How do you address when people are skeptic about, play? We're working. We can't play and work at the same time.
Yes,
What do you, what do you tell them?
I think that comes from kind of developing skill and confidence over the years, and it does happen. And often when as a person, as a facilitator coming in, I noticed that in organizations you just pick up the nuance of what's happening in the organization, and sometimes they want to kind of give it to you. And that's where actually the transform of PACT comes in. and I actually was speaking about this recently with on another podcast.
Oh,
I don't know, it's like
yeah,
but
we're
so
not your
I
first.
hope no, but definitely the first international one for a
Oh,
while.
there
But
you go. Now you can say you're international. Awesome.
but so I was just thinking, God, I hope somebody isn't listening to one after the other because they'll go, this woman just does the same stuff. But what I was going to say is that there's something about when I first started, it's that feeling of course, I want everyone to love the sessions, and I am a innate people pleaser, and I like getting along with people. But actually, I think the transformation comes in the sometimes the confrontational nature of this is a bit challenging, but in a safe way, in a kind way. And so what I tend to do now is really acknowledge and accept people's reticence and maybe name it or be kind about it and kind of and you often it's those people that can't. I've had guys, big guys in their suits, and they're sitting next to me in the circle, and they kind of like this, and they just don't want to turn around. Or one woman, I said, "Okay, say your name and do an action," and she gave like a really rude finger sign. That's the first thing, and I went, "Okay, let's all do that," and you could see her shoulders drop. And that same woman 20 minutes later kicked off her shoes, engaged other people. And I think there's something about saying, yes, can be challenging. I had somebody say, you're not going to make us, are you? I said, omming's optional. So it's about being humorous, but also accepting this is challenging. It's not. And that's where the work is, and that's where the growth is. And so I try to name it, never take it personally, and just accept that it's people's. People say, oh, it's a circle. Or one guy said, but our lunch, we need our lunch. And it's kind of because people think, oh, what are you going to make me do? Are you going to make me look foolish? And I think
They're adulting.
Indeed. So a short answer to your question is I try to I create a culture of acceptance and model that idea of none of us are perfect. And I do often say my spiel is kind of like, look, as long as we're not wildly offensive to one another, you cannot get creativity and playfulness wrong. And that's and I often say, we take an idea to its extreme, like things like yes, and
right.
Think of the most ridiculous thing you can see. And if you can do this, of course you can make that suggestion in the meeting. What's the worst that can happen? It doesn't get picked up and you will survive. And here we're practicing those skills. So I find that in some groups, they're just ready to let off steam and really mess around and get the benefit. It's meditative almost, isn't it? It's the same. Yeah. It's because you're focused and you're in the moment. And afterwards you go, whoa, feel good. And others, I have to say, okay, why are we playing this game? Why are we doing this? This activity transfers like this. So some people need to really get it up here, and some people want to kind of internalize it. Yeah, we all learn differently. So I suppose
I think that happens a lot with different industries.
Right.
If you get a bunch of accountants together, it's going to be a lot different than, marketing and advertising people.
Oh yeah.
So
true.
They tell they tell number jokes.
Number jokes, right?
But yes, I've only had it. I've had two in all the years. One guy that kind of sat down and was looking at his phone, and everyone else is, in the intro and doing what I've told her to. I said, okay, what's happening? I don't do this. And I thought, okay, Jess, this is where your skills come in, because of course it's great when everyone loves it. So we had a chat and I said, listen, don't or won't. And I was saying, you can't be on your phone while your colleagues are. You have to be here. And if you're not going to be involved, then you at least have to be engaged, because it's not fair on them, because they're also putting themselves out there. And so I said, how about this? How about you give me a nod for the ones you join, and the ones you totally don't want to do, you just be there but don't say something, and then you do when you can. And he said, and I don't mean this in a patronizing way, but it's sweet in a way where all of us have that little person inside of us. And I think if we can encourage that dialogue, and that all of us just want to be kind of accepted in some way, don't we? So if I'm like, you're doing it, or why are you not doing it? It's kind of becomes this.
Well, thing. That's forced fun.
Indeed, which is people's dread.
Yeah.
Well,
Jeffrey, go ahead.
Yeah. So we're going to gross generalities. I mean, the English as a group are generally a little more reserved.
Indeed.
So do you find them more difficult to get out of their shell? Do you have to crack through it? Or Is that just a front they put on when they're out in public, and then when they get in a quiet room that goes nuts?
Probably yes. You do. I think it's really hard to generalize. I went to a kind of super corporate kind of financial place and I thought, what's this going to be like? And they all were a bit buttoned up. And then they were having so much fun together and quite wild, I would say, like with their humor with one another. We sometimes play a game where I say, okay, Rona, you're going to say, Jeff's going to mime something like cooking, and you're going to ask him, what's he doing? And he's not going to say cooking. He's going to say what he wants you to do. And so people say, I'm dancing, and the next person has to dance. But people were quite risque with what they were telling their colleagues to do, and they were roaring with laughter. So you never can tell like who's going to really go for it. So I think, yes, it's hard to generalize about the Brits. They can get quite wild as well.
All right, and one more.
They just don't move their
they don't move their mouth.
Oh, those ones are just in the upper echelons. We never encounter them.
Yes, I'd say. Thurston Howell III. No, he wasn't English.
Yeah.
Hang on. Going back to generalities. So one of the things I feel in terms of learning, especially adult learning, I think in general, I would generalize, say the UK is way ahead of the United States. So, for example, I believe they really got into storytelling faster than the U.S. did when it was new to the corporate world. Like Ian Rowland is into cold reading. Darren Brown, was into utilizing neurolinguistic programming, to a greater extent than they were using here. So do you think that's the case with play? Because a lot of times you mention play here, and it's frustrating because, excuse me, no, we have to do something serious, like, I don't know, team building.
Which
or
is,
something.
yeah. And I'm gonna answer because Jess, I mean, I think Europe is way ahead of the United States in terms of play.
That's so interesting because, and this could just be my perception, but most of my play buddies, like your good self, Rona, are in the States.
Really?
And I feel my perception is almost a mirror of what you've described, that there's one or two people emerging now that I'm aware of on LinkedIn, and it's very cerebral. There's Lego, serious play, and there's a few of those. And then there's people doing like play, but super like from it's very business, and which there's nothing wrong with at all.
No. Everybody has a slightly different edge to it.
Play, but my feet, the people that I connected with over actually from the pandemic have been probably all people
Jeff Harry, Gary Ware,
Kirsten in Canada. And so I have kind of, my personal perception has been that people have been more open to play on your side of the pond. So it's really hard to know.
Yeah. Because there's Anthony Trehair he's from Italy. And
yes,
he does like juggling things and
yes,
it's a whole different take on it. So this is what I love, that we are all finding each other and helping each other, because we all have a slightly different bend. You and I are very similar in the sense of our backgrounds and how we come to it. You focus on different things than I do, and all of my friends from my play and ponder group, and people from Julie Trell from Australia, and we all just are starting to know each other. So we have like a play gang.
This is the way I translate it, Jessica. There are just more people in the United States doing it, so there's less competition in London. So obviously, Rona, you got to be moving to London. Then you and Jessica can rock.
We'll just dominate the world.
Exactly.
I mean, I genuinely, and I know this is my character as well as a person, but I genuinely do believe that each person has their own qualities and characters, and that we can all enhance one another's practice and support and kind of collaborate and cross promote. And I do believe there's enough to go around in all industries.
Yes.
And I've never been one for that kind of, people say, oh, for business, check out what's the competition doing. And I'm like, it's just not how I see it. Maybe I'm super naive and
Well,
that's why I
no, because
don't have more work. But
play is based in positive psychology, and so when you flip your mindset, you the more you give, the more you get. And
absolutely.
it's amazing how I have flourished learning from my friends.
Yes, I
So
do believe as well. I think there's that kind of, I mean, my actual dream for the organization is to get to an organic point where I have more bookings than I can handle, and then I can go, right, I need Rona, I need
right.
Gary, and that there's brilliant people out there that have your way of being inclusive and they have their own way of doing it. But and
Right.
I do that. I freelance with other people's hats on and I say, look, you just tell me what you want to be put out there and I'll do it under your banner. It's that kind of, I'd love to be at that point, in fact, that you could sort of call on those people to sort of spread the playful word.
Well, when I come to London, we'll just have to think of some things to do together, and I'll just fly over now that I have a place to stay.
Yay.
So, what just to kind of end off, if
Mm.
if someone's new to the idea of play in professional settings, or if they're, a manager, or if they're an educator, where do you think, besides hiring you, where do you think they should
That's a
start?
must. In terms of integrating play into,
Or just the idea of it, to get their people used to it, the idea to open them up.
I think that play, we have to acknowledge that people do feel under pressure and they do feel busy and overwhelmed. And I think I'll give you an example of schools where sort of public schools, as in state schools in the UK, you meet some incredible stuff and they're just chasing time and they've got they're super, the curriculum is such that they're like super regimented, if you like, and they don't have much time to spare. So I would say that as for a manager, it's about how do we integrate this in a way that enhances and works with what's already happening. So it doesn't feel at odds and it doesn't feel like another thing to do.
Right.
And then look at where do the team, so develop an honest dialogue. Where do the team feel stuck? Where could they develop? What's their growing edge? And how do we best perform? We perform when we feel listened to, when we communicate, when we feel connected, when we feel humorous even and uplifted. And it's about perhaps finding ways to integrate. And loads of the games that you and I probably play, they take 5 minutes. So it's not that you have to have a play session every week. You could pick some games or some activities that really get people talking or loosen them up. Start with those. Start with icebreakers in the morning before your team meeting. Check in with people, but not in find new ways of doing it. Things like unique similarities. What are 3 things that we're alike and 1 thing that's specific to you? And people have got quite a lot to say. And then you go, okay, gang, or how are we today? What's your temperature gauge? Did you have a good weekend? Are you uplifted? And just in words that are sort of, and then we all know where we're at when we start the day. So it's finding ways to connect in uplifting and playful ways, which will actually enhance our performance. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I do one if you could describe your mood as the weather,
Love it.
what would it be like?
Actually, I
Same
used to
sort of
do,
thing.
I love
You
that. And
may use that.
yay. I'll trade you. I used to do a really nice one online where we would spend a couple of minutes. So we check in by give me 5 words, I always say. So you can either do a sentence if people feel reticent. So I'll say, okay, thank you, Jess, if that's all you want to give, or you can give like a little mix. You could say, I'm curious, I'm excited, I'm also tired, hungry, cold, and people then can say, I want to go home or whatever they want to say. And then we could check out at the end. And so and also on Zoom, you can change your name. So how are you and your favorite condiment or meal? So you get things like curious paprika or irritated curry. And it's like and
That's
there's
fun.
something really nice because people can say whatever they want and it's contained, right?
That's
And then
great.
I say, just don't forget to change it back before your next pitch meeting.
By the
Like
way,
you're
I want to go home. Five words. Great. Although I am home. I'm already home.
That's
so
right. That's
you
right.
know what?
Your
Wait
wish
a
came
minute.
true.
Exactly.
Granted.
Poof. Right.
Just click your
Oh,
heels
my God.
3 times, Dorothy.
So, Jessica, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
They can find me on LinkedIn as Jessica Shaw or PACT Creative. And they can find me on Instagram. And they can find me, where else am I? Facebook, PACT _creative, I think it is.
Okay, and your website, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that.
Oh yeah.
That's a Freudian slip because I really need to like give that a bit of attention, but it keeps kind of going to the bottom of the pile. But yes, www.pactcreative.com.
It's all part of the ego. I have a terrible
Yeah.
website. It stinks, and people still
He
call.
keeps saying that
They
he
still
has to
they still
update
call. They still call. It's like,
Yes.
of course, I don't need a good website.
Yeah. That's what my partner says. He's like, look, you don't need, it's like, it's as long as people have something to contact you with, it doesn't have to
Exactly.
be super shiny. It's better to have a good product at the end of the day, right?
Right.
Indeed.
Right. Exactly.
All right. This
I
has
want to keep
been
chatting for hours.
I know. Well, we will have you. We will have you back.
We can actually meet in 3D.
I can't wait. That's going to be so much fun.
So
get together
we'll
for-
message each other and let's put a date in soon, and I'll come over to St. John's Wood, or I can show you another area and we'll have a coffee somewhere or something.
Yeah, have a spot of tea.
Spot of tea.
That was a terrible English accent. Okay. Anyway.
Actually,
Well,
I don't
that's
think
my American
I don't
one.
think it was bad. You sound like you're outlier of
From
London
New
or
Jersey,
something.
like Jess's. All right. That is it for us at Biz-Souls. I'm Rona Lewis.
I'm Jeffrey Hansler.
Thanks so much for playing. Thanks, Jess.
Thanks,
you
Jessica.
so much for having me. It was really lovely.
Good. We'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Biz-Souls Podcast with your hosts, Rona Lewis and Jeffrey Hansler. Did you have fun? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Talk to you next week.